And welcome back to the X Zone, everyone. I am Rob McConnell, and for the next 4 hours, I am your host. I am your guide as together we cross the time-space continuum to this place that I call the X Zone. It's a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. It's a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. And we come to you Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. Eastern until 2 a.m. Eastern, right here on the X Zone Broadcast Network, as well as on Simul Radio, Simul TV, Spotify, iHeart, and the list goes on and on and on. If you'd like to find out about the programming we have available for you 24/7, 365, visit www.xzbn.net. And for the X Zone TV channel that is exclusive to Simul TV, www.simultv.com. My guest this hour, X Zone Nation, is Dr. Bob Davis. He is an internationally recognized scientist in his field of neuroscience. He graduated with a PhD in sensory neuroscience from The Ohio State University and served as a professor of neuroscience at the State University of New York for over 30 years. Bob has published over 60 articles in scholarly journals, lectured national and international scientific conferences, and was awarded several major research grants from the National Institute of Health and the National Science Foundation. Now, since his retirement, he has co-authored articles in the Journal of Consciousness Studies and the Journal of Scientific Exploration. Dr. Bob has written 3 books entitled Unseen Forces, The Integration of Science, Reality, and You, The UFO Phenomenon, Should I Believe, and Life After Death, an analysis of the evidence. And Dr. Davis has also lectured on these topics at both national and international conferences. Now, for more information on Dr. Bob Davis, visit his website at bobdavisspeaks.com. And joining me now from the beautiful state of Florida is Bob Davis. And Bob, welcome back to the X Zone. Great having you with us.
Oh, Rob, it's an absolute pleasure being here. I'm a big fan.
Thank you, sir. And congratulations on your new book. The book is entitled, and once again for all our listeners, Unseen Forces, The Integration of Science, Reality. And tell us a little bit about this book. It sounds very intriguing.
Well, in general, it covers a broad discipline of spiritual, mystical, and extraordinary experiences under the heading of a peak experience. Okay. Not a unique term, but these peak experiences, which come in various sizes, shapes, forms, they have been reported, of course, throughout history, across cultures. And we're talking about altered states of consciousness beyond normal everyday awareness. So it's not your morning coffee with a bagel, but yet it still feels like a real life experience to those who do have them. And this includes what? Near-death and out-of-body experiences, even psychoactive drugs like dimethyltryptamine or DMT, ayahuasca. Even those who meditate for an extended period of time can achieve a peak experience, or may. And even those who interact with the unidentified aerial phenomena and their associated non-human entities seem to also have a peak experience that is similar, not uniquely similar in every respect, but all of these, let's call them trigger events, they all seem to have similarities as well as obvious differences, but that is what I think the book is trying to get at. The essence of consciousness, the interpretation of reality, understanding themselves and what life is all about through these types of experiences, because they are unique. And the bottom line question is are we the brain? What is consciousness? And are these individuals seeing a different world, or are they actually seeing this world differently? That's not a unique question. And all these people have some form of psychosis. We cannot rule that out, but they don't exhibit psychotic-like behavior, a dissociation, a schizophrenia of some type. I'm sure some do, without question. But why do they share the commonalities in terms of the reported perceptions of oneness with the universe, alterations of time, space? We all know this. They come back with unique insight and wisdom. And again, not all, Not all. Everybody has different personalities and reflects a peak experience in different ways. But the similarities are striking. They believe that their consciousness somehow left their body, that they engage in telepathic communication either with deceased relatives, supreme beings, or even the alien greys of today,
Sure.
among other creatures associated with the UAP phenomenon. And not everybody. But they say they have an increase in intuition and psychic ability, can possibly heal medically others. They're one of a cosmic energy, on and on. And they have a dissolution of their self. But they have this unique peace, joy, and that's what is uniquely different than those who have a true psychosis. These individuals, at least the vast majority of them, report to have what shall you call it, an enhanced awareness, increased spirituality. They feel more humane. All the things that are opposite to that of what one who is a truly psychotic would behave, where they're in deep depression, anxiety, adverse effects of themselves, as well as in interpersonal relationships and work, etc. What is going on here? Are some individuals, who knows how many, and it's more common than we think, who report these things through near-death, out-of-body, etc. experiences? Are they actually piercing the veil, touching another reality, interacting with beings, or is it all hallucinatory? And I can't say with 100% certainty what the answer is. I'm simply trying to tell society that this is an important issue.
Right.
Psychologists should certainly take it much more seriously than they do. And unfortunately, those who have these kinds of experiences are understandably shaken up. I mean, how would you feel the next morning after interacting with a UAP, or at least believing that they did? Not that they may have actually, although I tend to lean in that direction, but we can't be absolutely certain. But the point is, they feel it is real, realer than real, and you can't dismiss that. That's their reality, and you have to manage them as best as possible because they have such anxiety. Why me? What happened to me? Am I psychotic, etc.? Of course they're different. I would be off the wall.
So would I.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about the Walmart of the paranormal here. This is something that affects hundreds of thousands of Americans. I mean, 200,000 Americans, I think the last statistic I saw, has a near-death experience on an annual basis, let alone worldwide and over time.
Is it possible, Bob, that the paranormal is actually something that is very normal, but we just haven't discovered how it works into our lives and into our both subconscious and conscious minds?
Yeah, perfect. I agree with that perspective 110%. The paranormal represents gaps in our knowledge. Yeah. Of what is normal. And you can say that for every time period. And we all know it's just the 21st century. My gosh, look where we were 100 years ago. Yeah. We're all aware of that geometric leap. And then these tic-tacs that we're seeing off the USS Nimitz seems to be getting media attention every day.
Well, when it comes to the tic-tac and what's going on with the USS Nimitz, we have to take a look at who is behind the sudden re-interest in it. You've got Senator Harry Reid, who has been filling the pockets of certain UFO people. You've got the History Channel that has decided to come out with something called Unidentified with Tom DeLonge. Tom DeLonge, the what is it called, the Star Academy or Academy to the Stars, something like that. That is in deficit of $37.4 million right now. So when we look at the Tic Tac, that is being promoted and being sold by a major corporation in order to make money. But my feelings go to John Q. Public, who have these experiences, whether it's an experience, out-of-body experience, whether it is a communication with the other side, or whether it is a psychic something that is a psychic event, or even seeing something in the skies that they just can't make sense of. And society looks at them and basically says, hey, you know what, you're nuts. But when it comes to somebody with money that is being funded by the U.S. government in a black operation budget, that seems to be legitimate. And, I personally would rather take the word of John Q. Public than anybody who has anything to do with a government-backed black project. Bob, you and I have to take a commercial break. We'll be back on the other side. And X Zone Nation, if you'd like to find out more about our guest this hour, Bob Davis, visit his website, bobdavisspeaks.com. I'm Rob McConnell. This is the X Zone. We'll be back on the other side of this break. Don't go away. Welcome back, everyone. Dr. Bob Davis is my special guest now. His website is bobdavisspeaks.com, and his Facebook page is facebook.com/Robert Davis Lectures. We're talking to Bob about many things tonight, but I'd like to, get you, the members of the X Zone Nation, to look for his new book. It's entitled Unseen Forces, The Investigation of Science Reality. And always, Bob, thanks very much for coming on the show. Great talking to you again.
Same here.
How would you describe the role of a neuroscientist in today's society for those members of our audience who may not have an idea what a neuroscientist is?
Well, basically trying to understand the brain, either from a global scale, how it processes information, stores memory, integrates information into some coherent whole, and applies emotions to it. Others investigate various diseases and effects on perception, etc., while others research in different areas. There's so much to do based on the different areas of the brain on the micro level or the macro scale. But the point is, and trying to understand where the seat of consciousness resides. We're trying to understand where the spirituality, if there is one, or the so-called God spot. There's now in neurotheologies a concerted effort trying to figure out if there is an area of religiosity, spirituality. And some people suspect it's an inferior posterior area of the parietal lobe, for whatever it's worth, where sensory integration occurs. And that might underlie certain aspect of the peak experience. If that is affected somehow, the brain, of course, is remarkably delicate, despite its unique complexity. In fact, one neuron requires a computer the size of the United States to make comparable function. Just to illustrate, then we have 100 billion neurons of them and associated hundreds of trillion synapses. It's remarkable, of course. Trying to make sense of that is extraordinarily difficult for obvious reasons. But here again, is the peak experience a pure brain event where one fails to distinguish the external from internal reality, and thus has some alterations of time and space? They lose their ego. They don't realize themselves, and that could be a brain event purely elicited by a number of factors, stress being one, sleep transition disorders, and physiologic problems in the form of tumors. You remove the tumor from that area I just mentioned,
right,
and people become more spiritual. There are these kinds of effects, emotion, perspective, spirituality, that can play games or be an outcome facilitated by the brain for a variety of reasons. The question is, are these people who have near-death out-of-body, UAP, etc., could they be experiencing a pure brain event, or is there something certainly more, as I alluded to earlier? Are they experiencing another reality?
What is your hypothesis? Based on your research and based on your expertise as a neuroscientist?
It's hitting that question hits it right on the head. of course. And I wrestle with that just about every day in a serious fashion. And I'll tell you, it's highly frustrating because, I'm a trained scientist, but I also say that's BS because that can bias you too. You got to be very careful of that. The scientific method doesn't apply to this.
Right.
So therefore, many don't consider it normal in regard to paranormal.
Right.
So these people have a neurobiological disorder of some type, a misperception, etc., psychological disturbance. They write it off to all that. In many cases, of course, it applies, but not all. I do believe that because so many people are experiencing it, because they're being altered in so many dramatic, emotional, personal ways that alter their viewpoints and values from that moment forward, that is their reality. It results in an increase in divorce. It affects interpersonal relationships in many ways. They're different people, not all, but the vast majority are. The fact that is the case, and they feel to be changed, again, generally positively, more compassionate, sympathetic, less materialistic, less egoic, more sensitive about the planet. All those things I think your audience and you certainly are familiar with. There are major positive, transformative, psychosocial changes to these individuals. Not all. Many had negative, horrendous experiences, wish it never happened for a variety of reasons, but they're in the minority. Fortunately, maybe 5-10% tentative incidence numbers, and we don't have a good handle on that, of course. But I'll tell you, these individuals are certainly wondering what happened to them and are in need of considerable help. And is their consciousness, or an aspect of it, actually leaving their body and actually interacting with another reality? But the fact that they believe that they are suggests maybe that they are. It's our perspective on what is true reality. If we look at it that way, maybe it's real. Science will regard anything as real as long as the sensory system in the body can experience it, nothing more. And that served us well. Newtonian physics has served us very well over the last few centuries, but it doesn't apply to all of the phenomena we are experiencing. Millions are experiencing it in varying ways, and again, regarded as real and being altered.
Has there been any comparison or any studies or timelines done to see if there has been an increase in global paranormal activity with the advent of cell towers going into certain places, or the increase in EMF fields caused by electrical overhead wires? Is there something that we have developed that has triggered something to get more people to believe in the near-death experience, out-of-body experience, communication with the deceased, seeing UFOs? Is there any correlation?
Rob, you're asking, again, an excellent question here. There are many factors, like you named, as well as psychosocial factors, yes, indeed, that have a strong influence on individuals who, of course, are being persuaded by things on the internet, things that they liked, that they align with because it's consistent with their beliefs. Yes, EMF activity, and that's a good point. I'm not aware, Rob, of any formal studies that looked specifically at that. These invisible waves in the air. It's a fact. And there are some preliminary data that's harmful to the physiology of the body. And if it is, of course it could alter. Sure. And it does. It does, especially if you're heavily exposed to it. And some people are. Through cell towers, indeed. And I forget the radius. What's a safe radius, if that is accurate? And I forget what that is, like maybe a mile or two. You should be at least that far from cell towers, because there is an increase in leukemia. But I don't know about paranormal activities. Wouldn't surprise me. That should be looked at. There are external factors, indeed there are, and of course psychocultural ones that are well established. We see the evolution of the UAP over time. They looked like dirigibles in the late 1890s when we had blimps flying around, or they turned into Foo Fighters in the 40s. The contact Venusians in the 50s.
George Adamski, sure.
then the abductions started with Betty and Barney Hill in '61, whatever, and Whitley Strieber's book Communion. Then people started to report seeing these alien grays, but they did before. Many say they looked at the book and that was a being that interacted with them a long time ago. But nevertheless, the incident statistics increased dramatically, and they probably are. To get to your good point, they probably are continuing to increase dramatically. The more exposure, certainly on TV. This, as you said, Unidentified, I believe, is going to air tomorrow, Friday. It's an attempt, to really stimulate interest / business, using compelling anecdotal evidence. I'm sure tweaked in some regards to their liking, but one thing that's good that's happening is they're raising the consciousness of the public that the phenomenon is real.
But are they raising the consciousness of the public in a negative manner?
You can make that case. Yes, that in the sense that some false information is being presented to them. Nothing new. It goes from like no comment at all to now something the Navy is saying, hey man, we gotta have power to take a look at this and report it. And that opens some eyes up in the public. Now you have this. Right, and the show on help me out, the recent series
Project Blue Book
with Project Blue Book. Project Blue Book. They altered it greatly too. It was dramatized. Certainly, there were facts in it. Yes, but there was some inaccuracies. So when you get to TV, anything is possible, I guess. Unfortunately, and this too has to be questioned, as you said. Yes, indeed.
All right, stand by, sir. You and I have to take our news break at the bottom of the hour. And X Zone Nation, my guest this hour is Dr. Bob Davis. His website is bobdavisspeaks.com, and his Facebook page, facebook.com/Robert Davis Lectures. We're talking about Bob's new book, amongst other things, Unseen Forces, the Integration of Science, Reality, and You. And Bob and I will be back on the other side of this news break as we continue here in the X Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, on the X Zone Broadcast Network, iHeartRadio, Spotify, iTunes, Simul Radio, Simul TV, and of course the X Zone Broadcast Network at www.xzbn.net. X Zone Nation, no matter where you're listening to us around the world, whether you're in your car, whether you are on the beach somewhere in Australia, whether you're on the Great Wall of China, whether you're in some beautiful part of India, whether in the United Kingdom, Canada, or the United States, if you're listening to this show, it's because we have sparked an interest in you. You're looking for answers. We all are. We want answers, and I think that these are the times where the answers are going to come to us, and only by asking questions and challenging the very flimsy presentations of so many out there will we get to the truth. People ask me, Rob, you seem like a skeptic. Why do you do your show? It's very simple. I want to believe, but I want evidence. I want proof. As a former police detective and investigator, my life was built around finding the proof, the evidence, so that the innocent could be freed and the guilty could be punished, incarcerated, brought before justice. And I think the same applies as a broadcaster, because it is my responsibility to bring to you, the members of the X Zone Nation, the people like Dr. Bob who can help us better understand what others call paranormal, and as we were talking earlier in the show, that I think is just normal. We just can't understand what is going on, so of course it's going to be paranormal. But the answers are out there, X-Zone Nation. They may not be the answers we want. They may not be the answers that we like, but they will be the answers that will bring closure and a better understanding to what so many of us question. Near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences, unidentified flying objects, submerged objects, the great mysteries of life. This is what we are working for here in the X-Zone. And whether you're listening to us on the X-Zone Broadcast Network or whether you're watching us on Simul TV, we all have questions. And I want to thank each and every one of you for joining us to help solve the problems, solve the questions. And I've used this analogy many times. We all have in our pocket a piece of the jigsaw puzzle to every mystery in life. If we were all to get to a big table, take that piece of a jigsaw puzzle, put it on the table, and work together to put this jigsaw puzzle together, there is nothing that we could not solve. A couple of years ago, Dr. Bob, I was at a radio station in Toronto. My good friend Andrew Crystal was the host. And we decided to do a little experiment downtown Toronto. Bloor and Yonge Street. All I did was I went downstairs, stood on the corner of Bloor and Yonge, and looked up. My hands were in my pocket, and I was just looking up. Within minutes, there was a crowd of about 20, 30 people, and they too were all looking up, and the majority of them were pointing at what I was looking at. But I was not looking at anything. But everybody saw what they thought I was looking at. How does this play into today's society from a neuroscientist, scientific point of view?
Wow, it's almost like a form of hypnosis. You know, you made them believe. They looked at you and they believed that you actually noticed something because you standing there and pointing is unusual.
But I wasn't pointing. My hands were in my pocket. All I was doing was just looking up.
Well, maybe it was convincing enough to the obvious point where they imitated it. The people certainly are like that, not all. They follow the leader. Why? I can't entirely be sure, but maybe it reflects the innate spirituality or the fact that we are, like you said, truth seekers.
Right.
Respect that attribute, and I think you're in the minority. We all have questions. What do I live after I die? Sure. Things of that nature, the obvious ones that pertain to survival, but. Your listening audience, I have great respect for those that go beyond that and spend time probably every day thinking about, what is, like you said, a near-death experience. Is a UAP valid? What intelligence is behind it? What's their objective? And more importantly, are they interacting with humans? If so, why? They exist throughout humankind ever since we crawled out of the primordial soup. But we ask these questions, and we have this innate capability of spirituality. Our forefathers, ancestors always questioned what lightning is, the thunder.
Sure.
Different questions that were appropriate for the time, given the lack of scientific knowledge, of course. But that same fear, curiosity, a desire to know, survival, that is all transferred down to us. Not only did we acquire certainly the arms, the legs, the upright position of the body, etc., but we acquired that stuff too, trying to figure out what the heck is going on here. Now, as we advance technologically, the questions become different, and maybe the phenomena also change. One being that near-death experience. Advancements in life-saving technology are allowing people to live longer when they flatline. So there's an increase in NDEs. Right. So we have an increased anecdotal evidence of that, and many people do research regarding it as real. They saw the light, they spoke to somebody, a supreme being, the deceased relatives, your time's not, we all know that. Mm-hmm. It's redundant, but it's important. It's important and should not be ignored. Is it a brain event? Maybe, but why do the people who have an NDE only see deceased relatives and not their neighbor Jack next door? Why did they see people who had died that they did not know who had died until they were revived and found out later? Why do children have the same kinds of experiences and they were never exposed to anything about NDEs, no psychocultural effects, and they have the same kind of reports as older individuals, shared death experiences. People are far removed from someone who's dying, goes through a near-death experience at the same time as the individual who is having it. That's not that uncommon. So other people far removed know that the person died, and they were proven correct. Shared death experience. So there's a lot of nuances to these phenomena, but there's so many similarities. You scratch your head. Rick Strassman did a lot of research with DMT. He met with John Mack, the Harvard psychiatrist.
Right.
He did, that
Sure.
research with the alien abduction phenomena. Okay, they met, compared their two groups, DMT group versus alien abduction group. Rick Strassman said, quote unquote, "We were blown away by the similarities of the two groups." There could be, obviously, some underlying foundation, unifying principle that gives rise to the similarity. And it's something called consciousness, but I hate to use even the term consciousness because it's thrown about so often. Everybody has a different definition of consciousness. The doctor's definition is different than the philosophers or the theologians, the psychologists. You know that. So what is consciousness? Well, there's good insight, but we don't have a clear criteria of what that is. Nor do we for the other things, let alone a peak experience. But we're getting at it.
But what is your definition of consciousness, sir?
The realization that I am aware of being aware, and that I can foresee and plan my future. Now, that's my insight, but I say it with reservation, Rob, because I could certainly be wrong, and it's not a firm definition because I just know there is something. It's more of a feeling than something I could put into words. I just can't see myself as being nothing more than 100 million neurons, this jelly-like mass of fat and protein between my ears. It just doesn't make sense. So that's the way I got to answer it, pal. It's more a feeling, and I'm not alone. A lot of people feel the same way, I think. And do I live after I die? Well, I couldn't help but not write the book, Life After Death, analysis of the evidence. And we get hints that there are possibilities of a form of continuation of consciousness after bodily death. I may have been on your show, Rob, talking about that book. I'm not sure if it was that or the UFO book. But regardless, that's the essential question that we're talking about here in regards to all these phenomena. Is consciousness the brain? Are we an aspect of consciousness? Are we, are we not the body? And people feel that their consciousness is hijacked, for instance, with the UAP phenomenon. During the DMT, they feel that their consciousness is interacting with non-human entities. But just the same people who have a UAP experience will often report that they're physically taken through a wall or whatever to some room and while on a table being examined XYZ. We know what goes on. So, but that's in the minority, Rob. And I was part of a study where we saw that about 75% of them feel that their consciousness interacted with non-human intelligence.
All right, Dr. Bob, I have to take a break, so please stand by. And Exo Nation, Dr. Bob Davis is our very special guest this hour. For more information on Dr. Bob, visit his website, bobdavisspeaks.com, on Facebook, facebook.com/Robert Davis Lectures, and his newest book, Unseen Forces, The Integration of Science, Reality, and You, is available at Amazon.com. We'll be back on the other side of this break as we wrap up this hour here in the X Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away. Welcome back, everyone. Just before we get back to our guest of this hour, Dr. Bob Davis, I'd just like to remind each and every one of you about some of the other shows that we have on the X Zone Broadcast Network. Connecting with Coincidence with Dr. Bernie Beitman, MD. Dr. Kevin Randall talks about a different perspective. Larry Lawson talks about paranormal stakeout. Gwilda Wiyaka, Mission Evolution. Sharon Lynn Wyeth, Know the Name, Know the Genius in You. Heart to Heart with Dan and Angela Clark. And they're just a few of the many programs that we have available for you 24/7, 365 on the X Zone Broadcast Network. Now, if you're listening out there and you're saying, I'd like to do a show, it's very simple. Just send me an email, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, and one of our producers will contact you, and who knows, maybe you too will be able to have a show right here on the X Zone Broadcast Network. Our guest this hour, Dr. Bob Davis. He's the author of many books, but we'd like you to go to Amazon.com later on tonight and buy his new book, Unseen Forces, The Integration of Science, Reality, and You. It's available on Amazon.com. And for more information about Bob, visit his website, bobdavisspeaks.com, and on Facebook, facebook.com/Robert Davis Lectures. First of all, Bob, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's always great talking to you. But listen, I have a question for you. What was it in your life that pointed you in the direction as a neuroscientist to investigate the, let's use that word, the paranormal aspect of reality?
Yeah, wow. I think from childhood on, I had that maybe that gene, that innate quest to seek the truth.
Right.
I, like you probably, and millions of others, we were influenced certainly by society and the media, flying saucers, that whole hype, of course. But I've always been a ufologist in the closet, so to speak, when I saw two orange orbs in the night sky in Sedona, Arizona in 2012, they appeared, they remained stationary for a few minutes, and then immediately winked out.
Wow.
One came from within the other, I believe. That motivated me to write my book, The UFO Phenomenon, Should I Believe? And I retired so I could be more open, about my interests and direct my attention, so to speak, research focus a little bit in the area that I had an innate quest for, that try to find the truth, like you and your listeners. And I do it my way. I don't know if it's the right way, but I try. It's fun. It's frustrating at the same time. But at least you learn something, you know?
But at least you try. So many people out there will just go on the internet, which I call the largest septic tank that man has ever created, because there's more crap in it than there is anything else. And they'll just take whatever other people are writing about, and they take it for verbatim. Like, there's Monday morning quarterbacks. Is that what they're called? Where you watch a game on the weekend, and Monday you know everything about it. Well, these are just like armchair researchers. They don't do any research. They just take whatever anybody else has said, put it together, and this is how a lot of these books are being self-published. But here you are, sir, a neuroscientist. You've paid your dues. Your PhD is a mark of distinction. It doesn't stand for piled higher and deeper, like a lot of people who call themselves doctors who buy their credentials on the internet these days.
Yeah, true.
And my hat is off to you for the work that you do. Where do you see the research going in the next 5-10 years into this fascinating world that you and I are involved in?
The research in terms of neuroscience? Or
neuroscience affiliated, associated with, or into the investigation research of the paranormal.
Yeah, it's not going anywhere fast, unfortunately, because we're still in the scientific paradigm of materialism, reductionism, and it doesn't ascribe to the paranormal.
But how do we know the scientific method is actually applicable to the world of the paranormal? I've had Seth Shostak on from SETI, and we haven't heard any signals. Well, Seth, are you listening for the right signal? How do you know that the people out there are not carbon-based units like we are, and they have a totally different way of communicating?
Yeah, they're not using radio waves, and,
Yeah, exactly.
and it's like hitting a needle in the haystack
Right.
with the frequencies that we're broadcasting on. Yeah, it's a beyond a long shot. But neurotheology, trying to find out where, if the brain is responsible for ESP, which I regard as valid, without question.
I agree.
And it's been demonstrated over 600 studies with over 6,000 people. I can go on and on as you can, with the validating, especially through Dean Radin's experiments, among many others. And that says a lot. What is this invisible pathway? That bypasses time and space, and U.S., Russia, we engaged in that, of course, with remote viewing in the 80s, with a varying degree of success, enough success that it is regarded as valid. But there's more convincing evidence on many different levels. But that also incorporates with the peak experience, because people who have these experiences are saying that they have telepathic communication with other beings, including the Greys. What's that all about? Why the consistency? And what is it that facilitates this kind of communication? The effects are subtle. Some people have it in a dramatic way. Most do not, or at least it's so weak we don't understand it, or it's not obvious to us. Nevertheless, where are we going? Trying to figure out if the brain is behind it all. And to some extent it may be, but not in all cases, I don't think. But is there a God spot? Is there a paranormal spot in the brain that is responsible for bending a spoon, for communicating with a person far, far away? Is it responsible for accessing another reality? Is the person seeing a different world, or seeing this world differently? And is the brain facilitating seeing a different world, or seeing it differently? Does the parallel dimension exist? Are there coexisting beings that interact with us via these different portals, I call it, that we're talking about? Or is the person, him or herself, the consciousness, the spirit, the I, is that somehow not being impeded by the brain's influence anymore because it's near death? Or someone may be interacting with it purposefully, like the non-human entities associated, so-called, reported by the UAP and in psychoactive states that people have, altered states of consciousness. And even psychology doesn't regard it as abnormal. Because they say that people who report saying that they interact with supreme beings in some cultures are regarded as shamans. They're regarded as authority, as to be worshipped. So if that's not abnormal, why should we consider it abnormal here?
Well, another thing to look at, in my opinion, is you have all of these people, whether you're Christian, Buddhist, whether you're Hindu, you believe in a higher deity, a deity that cannot be seen, but a deity that people pray to. They get the feeling that the deity is among them. And when you put that into the realm of the paranormal, it totally parallels the experiences, but yet it's okay to talk about this in a religious aspect, take it out of the religious aspect, and you're a wingnut.
Rob, you're hitting it right on. I said that in a little different way, but you're hitting it right on the head. They pray to the Supreme Being on Sunday, and on Monday they denounce or debunk those who report having an NDE or UAP encounter. Of course. Talk about the ultimate ridicule.
We've got about a minute and a half left, Bob. What are your final thoughts for the Exo Nation tonight?
Keep an open mind. Try to be objective. Easier said than done, of course. I fall trap to don't interpret everything literally. Stand back and try to appraise, because there's a lot of sense, and as Rob said, there's a lot of nonsense out there. Don't believe everything that you read just because it's consistent with your beliefs, or that you want to believe it to be true. And I think it starts there. Educate yourself. Well, of course, I'm going to say read my book. That's a good
I agree. That's a great idea.
There's a lot of good books out there, and be selective. That's all I say. And read the reviews. My book contributes in one area. Other books contribute in other areas, and then get a holistic picture, integrate it as best as possible, and seek the truth in that way. You know what? You're not going to find the ultimate truth conclusively, but it's fun along the way, and you learn a lot about psychology and biology, and other things that might also stimulate your mind. You're truth seekers, and I have great respect for you, and stay on that path. And thank you, Rob, for helping to facilitate just that.
Dr. Bob, it's always a great pleasure having you on the show. And like I said during one of the breaks, we're going to have you back on in the very near future, because I believe, sir, that you are going to be one of the key elements in unraveling this phenomenon called the paranormal. So thank you very much for joining us tonight, Bob.
It's an absolute pleasure, Rob. Thank you.
Exonation, Dr. Bob Davis has been my guest, and if you'd like to get more information on Dr. Bob, visit his website, bobdavisspeaks.com, or you can visit his Facebook page, facebook.com/Robert Davis Lectures. The name of his newest book is Unseen Forces, The Integration of Science, Reality, and You, and it's available at Amazon.com. I'll be back on the other side of this commercial break as we continue here in the X Zone with yours truly, Rob McConnell, from our broadcast center and studios in beautiful Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away.